Okay guys, so I started watching this video and decided to make a recap for you guys because, as you know, I am Russian, and yes, I have some things to say about the connection between chess and politics in Russia, using chess as a geopolitical weapon by Putin, and probably I will say some things that you will like if you're from the West, and probably I will also say some things that you will disagree with. I'm not a fan of Putin. As you may know, I had to leave Russia after the war because I publicly opposed it. But still, I have my own perspective. So let's dive into this. I'll click from the beginning to watch this video. Okay, let's go.
Vladimir Putin loves sports. He's mastered soccer, weightlifting, and badminton.
Yeah.
He schooled the Russian jiu-jitsu team, and in this ice hockey all-star game, he scored 8 goals while skating.
By the way, Russians made fun of those games because I think everybody was like letting Putin score all those goals. Everybody was playing so that not to hurt him. It was funny. So I think he can play hockey, obviously, but that was cringe.
Beautifully.
Putin!
But I imagine the sport Putin probably loves the most is chess.
I don't think it's true because I've never seen him play chess. Probably he can play chess. Most people were taught to in their childhood in Russia or Soviet Union, but I doubt it. But probably he likes it for geopolitical reasons. That's what they are going to say.
Because Russia dominates chess. Russian and Soviet chess players.
By the way, why do they say German Empire? It's not an empire. It's no longer an empire. Strange graphics. So they say that these are the countries with the most chess champions, and USSR/Russia has 26. I think they might have counted both male and female chess champions. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. There has been 18 up to this moment classical chess world champions, and among them, I think like a half or even more were Russians. So let's say, who was the first? Alekhin, then Botvinnik, Smyslov, Tal, Petrosyan, Spassky. Then this was like a period when the Soviets dominated. Then after Fischer, again, Soviets dominated Karpov, Kasparov, then Kramnik. And since Kramnik, there has been no Russian world chess champion. So 9 out of 18, exactly half were from Russia or USSR.
Have won 26
if we
world
speak about
championships,
male.
far more than any other country. And at least 200 grandmasters are Russian, more than double the next nationality.
Yeah, I think so, but I think they have old statistics because India, I'm sure, has already surpassed Ukraine. Yeah, India, I think, is number 4 after Russia, USA, and Germany in terms of grandmasters, because every year there are like 3 or 5 new grandmasters from India recently. So they are close to 100 now, I think. India is on the rise.
Russians have also led chess's governing body for 3 decades.
In chess politics, Russia has played a dominating role. It is definitely important for the Russian leadership to maintain its historic control.
But take a closer look, and it's quite clear that under Putin, Russian chess is in decline.
Actually, I agree mostly with this, but I will have some corrections as to this. But let's look. They are going to show us the rating lists, and definitely there is a big difference between what used to be and what is now.
When Putin rose to power in 1999, nearly half of the top 10 chess players were Russian. But in July 2025, none of them are. For the first.
By the way, yes, Yan Nepomniachtchi, Nepo, has dropped out of top 10 this year. He used to be like always top 10, I think during the last like 5 years, something like that. But this year he dropped out of top 10. He had a bad year, a number of bad performances. Due to family reasons, he had a family tragedy, and I think this has affected him a lot because his mother has sadly passed away. But to be honest, if we compare the Soviet Union and the current Russia, we need to take a look at the players from the former Soviet Union here. And Nodirbek Abdusatorov is from Uzbekistan, former Soviet Union. So there is one, and also Anish Giri. By the way, he's currently top 7 in the world, so the statistics is not fully up to date. But Anish Giri is number 7 in the world, and he also belongs, I would say, to the Russian school of chess. He trained in St. Petersburg, and most of his training, I think that what defined him is the Russian school of chess. So 2 out of 10, top 10 represent the Russian school of chess. Well, it's definitely a decline. Oh, well, Nodirbek represents the Uzbek school of chess, but it's like, I would say, the post-Soviet, because they are similar in terms of chess. I'm not saying that Uzbekistan is not a separate country. Of course it is, and I respect it.
First time ever. And if you're at a major chess tournament, you won't see a Russian flag anywhere.
You won't see a Russian flag, but it's funny that they showed Yan Nepomniachtchi a couple of times here. Maybe the editor of this video is not a chess player and he doesn't know how Russians look, because Russia, they say you won't see during top chess championships, you won't see a Russian flag anywhere, and they show Russian players. Russian players do play, but they play under the FIDE flag because of the sanctions regime. We will speak about that as well.
Russia is losing the dominance, but there's obviously also political reasons behind this.
They have completely collapsed.
This is the story of how Russia took control.
By the way, you've seen this this Elko chess. I have a friend of mine talking about stereotypical Russians drinking and stuff. We don't drink that much, what people think, but actually I have this set of Elko chess. Let me show it to you.
Of the chess world, and how it's letting it slip away.
Okay, so somehow I missed it, but you've seen this chess with drinking. And I have the set. If you want me to record a chess game against my friend playing this alcoholic chess, drop a comment and I'll do it. Looks nice graphics.
In the 6th century, chess was invented in India, but it was a much slower game than today's. The queen, for example, could only move 1 square diagonally.
Yeah, and the rook also moved
but
in
the 15th
way.
century, chess spread to Europeans who created the modern, quicker version.
Yeah.
The queen, for example, could move to any number of squares in any direction.
Because the Queen
of
Spain
in the 1700s, Russian Tsar
introduced
Peter
this.
the Great came across it and brought it to Russia. There, chess was played mostly by Russia's elite. But in the 1920s, Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin gave chess to the people. Lenin believed chess could help sophisticate his mostly peasant population. Plus, it was cheap to play, so anyone could do it.
Yeah, that's true.
By the 1930s, the Russian government was building chess clubs for workers, publishing chess magazines, and establishing rigorous chess schools for children. By getting everyone to play chess, the Soviets built a fire hose of talent. From 1948 to 72, every Open Chess World Champion was from the Soviet Union. Every Women's World Champion was from the Soviet Union. And every Chess Olympiad, a biennial tournament between national teams, was won by the Soviet Union.
That's domination.
It's hard to think of another country that dominated one sport like the Soviets dominated chess.
I think it was a bit of a snowball effect.
Peter Doggers is a chess journalist and author of The Chess Revolution.
They would more quickly than, let's say, Western talents get access to strong trainers, to a library of books, which was...
Yeah, that was very important. These days, everybody, like, why is Russia no longer dominating? There are several factors, but the most important factor is just ease of access of information. Everybody, everywhere has the same information. For example, Chessable courses or YouTube videos or private training over Zoom. You don't have to go to Moscow. I remember lots of biographies of top chess players. They had to go physically come to Moscow to play there. Even Fischer. Fischer had to learn the Russian language to be up to date in terms of like chess theory and stuff. So that gave a big edge to Soviet players, of course.
Very important in the pre-internet era that you had access to the theoretical books and the magazines that were showing the latest games. In Russia, that was all centrally organized.
The The Soviets' chess champions were smart, disciplined, and cultured, and the Soviet state used them to prove its superiority over its rivals.
True.
Here is where a Russian called Boris Spassky and an American called Bobby Fischer are to fight out the most intellectually exhausting battle known
Great
to the mind
match.
of man. The
Amazing
World
match.
Chess Championship.
The 1972 World Championship match was more than a chess match.
Lots of
It was
drama.
America versus the Soviet Union, capitalism versus communism.
That was probably the peak of influence chess had in the world. Like news broadcasts across the world were stopped, paused to announce the result of the game between Fischer and Spassky. All the world was following this.
The match was even played midway between the two rivals in Iceland. Fischer beat Spassky, but the Soviets regained the title and held it for several more decades. It also...
By the way, you've seen my poster, right? It's from this match. It's from this match, and here Fischer blundered. Bishop takes h2. His bishop got trapped. But it turns out, with modern engines, I've recently found out that this was not a blunder. This was still a draw. But back then we didn't have engines, and people were saying that this is a losing move. And Spassky sensationally won that first game, but then Fischer dominated the match and won in a convincing style, even though Spassky put up a fight.
held on to the women's world titles and won most chess Olympiads. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, but Russia continued to dominate chess, and eventually dominate the politics of chess.
Yes.
Meet Kurshan Ilumzhinov. In 1995, he was elected the president of the International Chess Federation, or FIDE, and he believes that chess comes from space.
I was taken
Yeah.
by my apartment in Moscow to this spaceship, and we went to some star.
Russia's all over the news, but I'm keeping my eye on one story in particular, Russia ending its moratorium on nuclear-capable submarines.
Okay, this is an ad. I will click through it. So let's continue with the main portion of the video. By the way, Kurshan Ilumzhinov, the former president of FIDE, truly believes that he was abducted by aliens, or like a very strange man. Very, very questionable stuff. And also politically, I agree. He was like, he definitely was used for political purposes. And yeah, FIDE still is very much a political organization, even though they claim not to be so. They are an actor, so to say. But whether I agree with the things that this author will say, we will see. Okay.
Episode. There's the world champions and runs the major tournaments. Many of its decisions are voted on by over 100 national federations. And its leaders tend to be pretty shady guys. Kurshan Ilumzhinov was the president of a small Russian republic when he was elected FIDE president in 19...
By the way, a Republic of Kalmykia is like, if you are from the States, you have states, like 50 states, right? If you're from India or Canada, you have some states, provinces. In Russia, there are also like 85, I think now, regions, or maybe more, because they have annexed some territory of Ukraine. And some of those parts belong, like, they still are part of the federation, but they have some separate laws because they originally belonged to some national minorities. For example, the Kalmyk Republic, I've been there. There is a cult of chess there because Ilumzhinov was the head of the republic, part of Russia, this Kalmyk Republic, and then he became head of FIDE. And they had some chess events, big events, World Chess Championship match also there. And I've been there. It's interesting. They have a huge chess board with huge chess pieces on the central square, at the very center of the central square in Elista, which is the capital of Kalmykia. And I played there. I had a girlfriend from Kalmykia, from this republic, and I went there to see. I was interested. How do they live there? And I played the elders, the Kalmyk elders, and I won against all of them. And they like said, respect to you, white man, something like that. Okay.
1995. He was eccentric, insisting that aliens once abducted him.
I talked with them, yeah. I understand.
And he was corrupt. Ilyumzhinov was linked to offshore firms that held the commercial rights to chess events, was suspected of rigging FIDE votes, and most importantly, Ilyumzhinov often acted in the interests of the Russian state.
Of course, I have not checked anything. I cannot be 100% sure, but the things that the author of the video is saying, I've heard lots of times from many people, from people who are close to FIDE. So sounds like it might be true.
He favored selling sponsorships to Russian companies like the state-owned oil company Gazprom, and while traveling the world for FIDE, he served as a sort of shadow Russian diplomat.
He was making visits with some of country leaders that we look back on as well, let's say dubious. Hard to believe that he really only played a game of chess and they really only talked about chess there.
Hard to believe.
His corruption and connection to Russia attracted a lot of criticism.
The chess world deserves a much better choice than Kirzan, who has brought the organization to the brink of financial ruin.
By the way, definitely they will speak about Dvorkovich, the current president of FIDE, but everyone from the chess world I've spoken with, including people from FIDE, everyone is saying that Dvorkovich is much better, but we will speak about that.
Basically serving as a Kremlin envoy, sort of at critical points, and of course numerous cases where corruption were quite apparent.
In 2015, the US sanctioned Ilyumzhinov for having business dealings with Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. And in 2018, after leading FIDE for 23 years, he resigned.
That's a long
time. But since FIDE proved to be such a powerful tool for Russian soft power, Vladimir Putin pushed for a replacement, Arkady Dvorkovich. He was another Russian politician, but even closer to Putin. And in 2018, he was easily elected to be FIDE president. Even though many...
I know personally Dvorkovich. I'm not a friend of his or anything, but I know that he watches my channel, at least the channel in Russian, he said. He watches, he seems like a nice guy, but he does have a history of being in politics. He was, I think, vice prime minister, one of the vice prime ministers under Medvedev. Medvedev was the president in between the numerous Putin's presidential terms. And from what I've heard, he's a more liberal guy, but he definitely has connections with the Russian political regime. And it's a big question, how tight those connections are, because he has, for example, when the war started, he said that I oppose the war, I stand with the Ukrainians, something like that. But then he still continues appearing in Moscow in some official events. So definitely he's not ostracized by the Russian regime. So I think he's balancing between not being punished by Putin, but also being likable to the Western world. Maybe it's sincere, maybe it's all a mask, I don't know. But personally, from what I saw and heard about him, seems like a nice guy.
And FIDE didn't want a second Russian president. Dvorkovich was viewed as a major improvement.
He was a down-to-earth career politician, and he had some very good ideas. One of the things he announced when he was a candidate is that he wanted to introduce term limits.
Dvorkovich also increased FIDE's budget substantially. But he also continued to keep FIDE close to the Russian state. A 2024 investigation found that up to half of FIDE's tournament budget comes from companies in or connected to Russia.
I don't think that this is necessarily bad. I think that there is, from what I've noticed, some stigma for some Western companies and potential sponsors connected with FIDE, because if you Google FIDE, if you Google Dvorkovich, you definitely will find some media publications that say that these are Russian ties and stuff like that. So I think this is a vicious circle. You say that FIDE is controlled by Russia, Russians are the only sponsors, or not the only. Half of money comes from Russia or companies related to Russia or post-Soviet companies. For example, Freedom is from Kazakhstan, one of the major sponsors. But I think this is the vicious circle, because everybody is saying, okay, this is a Russian asset, FIDE, and the Western companies don't invest, don't give money, and which is why FIDE has to take money from Russian sponsors. If there are more Western sponsors, I'm sure it will be better. And actually, Google has sponsored the recent World Chess Championship match between Daniil and Gukesh Domoraju. So definitely there are some changes, and it's not that only Russians give money to FIDE, so they must own FIDE. No, it's not that simple.
And he had many Russians serve in key positions in FIDE. But
by the way, I know some of those guys. That's true. There are lots of Russians in the FIDE team. There are also people from Kazakhstan, people from other countries, not just Russians, but many people who speak Russian. And I think it's not necessarily proof that like everything is controlled by Putin. No, it's just that people, when they come to work at some company or organization, they want to have the team that they understand, have close cultural connection, and it's quite common, I think, for companies to have, for example, a company that has an Indian CEO. He brings on board some of his colleagues from former companies where he worked, who are also Indian. Doesn't mean that Narendra Modi is controlling this company, right? So that he is controlling, for example, Google or other companies where the CEO is Indian. That's like an example. Yeah.
Despite all these Russians leading chess, Russians weren't winning chess like they used to.
And also an important thing, like probably this video is going to talk about this, but FIDE has accepted the sanctions and formally declared that Russians cannot play under the Russian flag, and the Russian team has not been allowed to participate in the Chess Olympiad. And this was by FIDE's decision. It was based on some decision by, I think, the Olympic Committee, but still. So it's not like FIDE is doing what Russian regime wants all the time. If that was the case, then FIDE would have allowed Russians to compete under the Russian flag and not kicked Russia out of team events. There are, by the way, changes now. Some, like, for example, kids events, they allow Russians to play, but under the FIDE flag, not under the Russian flag. But I'm sure it's going to be talked about probably in this video.
Technology was killing their advantage.
Yeah, technology.
Chess was one of the first games we taught computers to play as early as the 1950s. By the 1990s, so-called chess engines were defeating grandmasters.
Deep Blue
Russian grandmasters
versus Kasparov.
Garry is not. He looks disgusted. In fact, are we missing something on the chessboard now? And whoa, Kasparov
Historic.
has resigned.
Historic match.
Chess engines, then chess websites, made it easy for players anywhere to play and train against top talent. Meaning you didn't need a Russian coach to get good at chess anymore.
Yeah.
In my youth, living in a Danish city, I had no one to play with. I would travel to Moscow to get some knowledge, some atmosphere. That, of course, is completely different.
Peter Hein Nielsen is a Danish grandmaster and coach for several world champions, including the most famous player in the world, Magnus Carlsen.
Should I invite him on the podcast?
Magnus was also living in the outskirts of Oslo, but he could just log on and play online chess all the time, right? That, of course, makes a difference and makes the game much more democratic.
True. In the 2000s, non-Russian players started winning a lot of chess. World champions emerged from former Soviet states, but also India, Norway, and China.
By the way, they show here not just the classical World Chess Championship title holders, but also like Ponomarev, Kasimzhanov. They got the title of the FIDE World Chess Champion. There was this split in the early 2000s. There were several World Chess Championship titles, so they show here several of them, and Topalov also. Yes, these three guys are not like universally recognized to have been World Chess Champions, but they have actually this title. It was just not the classical title that those 18 other guys have.
In women's chess, China built a dynasty, and almost every chess Olympiad after 2002 was won by a non-Russian country.
Yes, but if you take a look, Ukraine has won, I think, Chess Olympiad. Armenia has won it 3 times, and Uzbekistan has won it. So these are post-Soviet countries. So if we count all the Soviet countries combined, because that would be more correct to compare, because this author is speaking about Soviet domination, but Russia is much smaller than the Soviet Union. So if we take this, the Soviet Union combined, still the domination has existed for quite some time. But definitely the trend is that India is now number one. And even if we combine all the post-Soviet countries, I think India still is number one, even against the former USSR currently. And the US also, yes, competes for that number one prize in chess Olympiads. And China.
Russia was still producing great chess players, but the internet let other countries produce great players too.
Now China has been quite successful on the elite level, but India is perhaps taking over.
Yeah.
There are so many Indian kids who cares about chess. They have now building a coaching tradition, but it's just an incredibly popular sport.
Yeah, actually Kazakhstan, where I live now, I had to leave Russia because I left Russia in the early days of the war, 2022, because they started preparing the law that outlawed saying bad things about the Russian army, and basically anything you say, if you say that the war is a war and not a special military operation, you can get thrown into jail, which happened to some of the people that I know personally, even, unfortunately, and some people were even killed, like Navalny, the political leader of the opposition. So it became unsafe to stay in Russia. So since then I haven't been there 3.5 years, and of course I'm not a fan of Putin's regime. You might have understood that already. I have criticized Putin before, even living in Russia, but since 2022 it became too dangerous to do this. So yeah, I had to leave.
Now, the internet revolution isn't Russia's fault, but what happened next was.
Yeah.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has killed tens of thousands of Ukrainians and possibly 1 million Russians. Pretty much every sport has banned or punished Russian teams, and chess is no different. In 2022, FIDE cracked down on Russia, banning it from sending teams to the Olympiad, and barring Russian players from competing under the Russian flag.
Exactly. So Dvorkovich was head of FIDE at this point, and this doesn't match with the statement that Russia, Putin controls FIDE. Probably they still exert significant influence. But I wouldn't say that Dvorkovich is Putin's puppet or anything like that. I think he's balancing, trying to balance the interests of various groups, including some of the Russian politicians probably, but also commercial sponsors and his own interests, obviously. And yeah, that's an important clarification.
Leading to a massive exodus of talent. Several Russian grandmasters switched to play for different countries, dramatically reducing Russia's talent pool.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, 2 out of those have been on my podcast. Check out Vladimir Fedoseev and Alexandra Kosteniuk. Also, I have to add, there is this semi-conspiracy theory that FIDE is indeed controlled by Russia, and the fact that they banned Russia from participating in team events and forbid Russians from using their flag in events, that this is just like a decoy. I don't know the correct word. So it's they try to pretend that they go in line with all those Western policies. But in fact, those people who spread those conspiracy theories say that in reality, FIDE is still controlled by Russia. It's just that Putin and his cronies have decided that it would be best to tread lightly, to not risk it too much, because otherwise, if FIDE did nothing, maybe Dvorkovich could have been impeached or something like that. That's a conspiracy theory that may be true, maybe not true. I'm not sure. Write it in the comments, your opinion. But I find it a little bit too conspiratorial for me, but I don't know. I haven't checked. And maybe we will know the whole truth in 50 years when some Secret Service information appears. I don't know.
And Russian players are receiving fewer invites to major tournaments, meaning fewer opportunities to climb up the rankings.
Yeah, that's true. That's an important factor. It's not just an opportunity to climb up the rankings, being invited to super tournaments. It's an opportunity to have practice, to play against the strongest opponents. And that is the only thing that helps you grow as a chess player. And Jan Nepomniachtchi, for example, Nepo, who has been 2 times the winner of the candidates tournament, the hardest tournament ever, like the tournament that the winner of which goes to play for the title. He has won it 2 times in a row. And he hasn't been invited to the super tournaments like Weikanze, Tata Steel tournament, like the most OG super tournament out there. Norway Chess, also they don't invite him. Since the start of the war, Daniil Dubov also, before the war he was invited, another guest of my podcast, a very strong Russian player. He is a little bit declining now, his rating in classical, but I think one of the reasons is he doesn't get invited, he doesn't get those games against the top, he's not in good shape. He plays in Russia in some events against 26 or 25 or 2400 rated players, not against the top. And Nepo doesn't have enough practice. He played this event in Uzbekistan this year, which he didn't do well in. But before that, he wasn't invited. He had to play in Moscow in the Aeroflot Open, the strongest Russian tournaments. But that's the only classical chess event that he was invited to. Actually, I think it's not an invitation based. He just appeared there. But closed super tournaments, prestigious tournaments, don't invite Nepo, which is weird because, okay, now he's top 20, but he used to be top 5, top 7 across like 5 years. So it would be logical to invite him to the Grand Chess Tour. I think he was the Grand Chess Tour participant. That's the only place that invited him. And it was last year, I think. This year he wasn't invited. So last year he participated in the Grand Chess Tour, some American events. So that's good. But in 2022, when the war just started, nobody invited Russians, and 2023 also. So 2 years without like practically no invitations to super tournaments, and you get weaker because of this. So Jan Nepo obviously plays a lot of Blitz, and he's the World Blitz co-champion and participates in some Blitz and Rapid events, but he lacks the classical practice. And Dubov and Esipenko, talented Russian junior, also close to 2700, they all suffer from this, I would say, discrimination, because none of them support the war, and they are not fans of Putin, and they sometimes some of them have hinted at their true political positions, but they cannot speak out loud directly that I'm against the war, Putin is a war criminal. If they say this, they get in jail, or they lose like their apartments, and they have huge problems. Definitely, you have to leave Russia if you do that. And not everybody wants to leave their own home country, their families. It's a difficult decision. For example, I took this decision. I sacrificed a lot to leave Russia, and I'm not regretting it, but I understand that some people cannot do it. They have to care for their elder relatives, for example, who cannot leave and stuff like that. So I think it's discrimination, not inviting Nepo to Tata Steel, for example, several years in a row.
More invites are going to Indian players.
I think they invited him actually once, but yeah, I might be mistaken. But yeah, they do invite, for example, people who left Russia and start playing for other federations, like they invited this year Fedoseev. So they like, whom I like, he's a great guy, but this is like, if you have the right political position that we like, then we invite you. If you don't, we don't. This is like, I don't like this.
Russian players who support the invasion are being shunned from tournaments. Russia's top grandmaster, Sergey Karjakin, is somewhat of a spokesperson for the Russian war effort.
Yeah, that's true. I think Karjakin is just like trying to earn as much money as possible, because he has lots of state-affiliated projects. He has given up practically on his chess career. He's just earning money. And I think he's sincere in his support of the war, because he's from the Crimea, the peninsula that has been annexed by Russia. And he has some personal stories that he dislikes Ukrainians, and he writes about it quite vocally, and he speaks out against Ukrainians and against some things that they do. I don't support him. I don't like him. I think he's a very questionable person, but I do believe that he is sincere in what he's doing. But I also believe that probably he has a huge financial motivation, incentive.
День поддержал начало СВО. Я же занял принципиальную позицию, что отказался участвовать в турнирах без флага и гимна России.
He's now one of the
He would be
senators
close to ranking
also
among the
in
top
Russia.
10 players, but he's listed as inactive for not playing in enough major tournaments.
And
They
he
still
won't.
have their super
Great
talents that are showing great results here and there. But at the same time, as long as this war is continuing, it will remain problematic for some tournaments to invite them.
While the internet allowed other
By the way, about youngsters, recently there has been the chess Olympiad for youngsters, and FIDE has allowed participation of kids in kids events under the FIDE flag, not Russian flag, but still. For example, the adult, the male and female teams of Russia did not participate in the previous chess Olympiad. They have, I think, allowed female teams now to participate, but starting from this year or next year. But the male team is still banned. And this year was the first time that Team Russia participated in any team event, like worldwide event, which was the Kids Olympiad, and they won it. So there are very many talented juniors in Russia, I have to say. So I think the future is potentially bright for Russian chess because they dominated. These guys won all their matches in the Kids Olympiad, and all 4 were grandmasters. There were 3 grandmasters and 1 woman grandmaster on the women's board, and they just crushed everyone. They just destroyed everyone. This was a domination, and like Indians, the Kazakhstan team, which is also strong, Uzbekistan team. Many other teams, they just did not stand a chance, honestly. So there are strong players, junior players, and maybe in juniors sections Russians still not dominate because there are some of the teams that I mentioned who are very strong, especially Kazakhstan, by the way, where I currently live. But still Russia is very much competing for the top in junior events.
countries to produce players as good as Russians, the war in Ukraine is preventing Russian players from keeping up. It's also dividing the chess world, with Arkady Dvorkovich, the Russian FIDE president, right in the middle. It's clear the Russian government is pressuring Dvorkovich to maintain Russia's influence in FIDE. After the invasion, Dvorkovich said his thoughts were with Ukrainian civilians, but then backpedaled by saying the war is a campaign against fascism.
Wow, I haven't heard that. So that's said by him. Probably they wouldn't make up the quotes, I hope. Yeah, but like the pretext for the war is, of course, campaign against fascism, but everybody, like every sane person, believes that this is BS, total BS. Of course, it's not a campaign against fascism, it's like Putin's war for his interests, geopolitical, financial. We don't know the whole truth, but definitely it's not about fascism.
In 2024, the Russian Chess Federation annexed some Ukrainian chess clubs. FIDE decided to suspend it, then reversed its decision. And major FIDE sponsors are still companies like Freedom Holding Corp.
By the way, they did not reverse the decision. Russia is still not allowed to participate in events. Maybe they reversed the decision to suspend the federation. Russian Chess Federation still works, but I'm not sure. Like, should they have banned Russian Chess Federation? It would have separated from FIDE. Then what's to achieve there? I don't know. This is Timur Turlov. I know him personally. Actually, he's the richest person in Kazakhstan right now. His company, Freedom Holding Corporation, is valued at more than $10 billion. It has a bank, insurance company, but the hugest branch of it, I think, is the brokerage company, and it's listed on the Nasdaq. And they are going to say some things about him later. Definitely, I know. Definitely, they will say some things. Let's hear them.
Kazakhstan-based bank linked to Russia. Dvorkovich scrapped the term limits he promised, paving the way to stay in power longer. Like every grandmaster, Peter Hein Nielsen is.
Okay, they didn't say anything about Turlov, so I should say it. There's been a publication by, I think, Hindenburg Research, some research firm from the US, I think, that said that Turlov has ties to Russia. And he definitely has, because he originally was from Russia. He immigrated and he left Russia and he now lives in Kazakhstan. But it was not after the war. He left like 15 years ago. He's now, for a very long time, been a citizen of Kazakhstan. And this research, Hindenburg Research publication, said that he should be sanctioned because he has some ties with Russia. But I think that in the US, there was investigation and they decided, no, he cannot be sanctioned. He's a decent guy. And his company stocks, Freedom stocks, are traded on NASDAQ. So if they were convinced that he is like Putin's puppet also, Turlov, which some people believe, I think, on the internet. But if the US authorities believed this, they would have sanctioned him as well. And he's not sanctioned. He's a nice guy, actually. I don't know him closely, but from personal experience, he seems like a true fan of chess. He invests lots of money into chess. Maybe some people will say, oh, that's because he's like an instrument of Russian geopolitics, and these are the money that he invests to put pressure on FIDE or somehow like influence some political decisions. That is one of the conspiracy theories I've heard. I have not heard any proof, and in this aspect I tend to think no. He's not. He seems to be very focused on Kazakhstan. He has business in Kazakhstan. He used to have business in Russia. Now he doesn't. I think they separated those businesses, and definitely the business in Russia that he used to have is much smaller. He's very successful in Kazakhstan. I don't think he needs anything from Putin or Russia. Definitely he has clients from there, and probably friends, lots of friends, connections, but doesn't mean that he's like Putin's puppet or anything. But that's my opinion.
Looking for the strategy behind it all.
He's trying to kick the can down the road and try to balance it. They allowed, I think, youth teams back in team competitions, and now the most recent decision is that female teams can come back, but not in the
Dvorkovich, fide.
It's a typical Kremlin strategy. Perhaps time will solve the problems.
But Dvorkovich is also being pressured by the rest of the chess world. Many players are opposed to letting Russian players in major tournaments.
I would say, at least in Garry's honor, I'm sure he would take the opportunity to advise against me stating the Russian and Belarusian Chess Federation. That is what I will do as well.
That was a gangster move by Magnus. He was awarded the title of greatest chess player of all time officially by FIDE last year, I think. And he and Garry Kasparov were two main contenders for that. And there was, I think, voting, and Magnus was voted number one. And when he came on stage, he said those words. But I think the journalists are misinterpreting things. He's not saying that you should not allow Russians to play. That's not what he's saying. Before that, journalists said exactly that some people are against Russians playing. No. He said against reinstating Russian and Belarusian chess federations. So I think the flags, something like that. So he's not saying that people from Russia shouldn't play events. He probably says that they should play under the FIDE flag, if I understand him correctly. And he's friends with Nepo. Definitely he would not be against it. They split the title, the World Blitz Chess Champion title with Nepo recently. It was a controversial event.
And despite leading FIDE, Dvorkovich hasn't lifted any of the major punishments on Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what does a divided, embattled FIDE mean for chess?
The sport is booming. Newer, faster formats are gaining popularity and more chess is being played online.
Yeah.
The attention and money are following.
EWC
what Russian
was
influence
great.
does remain may just be holding chess back.
We should ask ourselves, are we actually happy with this deal that we are sort of Russian soft power too? For me, the answer is extremely obvious. It's a hard no.
Well, if we believe that FIDE is the instrument of Russian soft power, maybe it's not good for chess. But if we believe that FIDE has some influence by Russians, because definitely it's the case, then it's not necessarily too bad. For example, let's imagine Indians dominated FIDE, all top officials of FIDE were Indians, and they promoted some sometimes some agenda by India, but not like something that harms other countries. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's horrible and it's bad for chess. And it doesn't look like Dvorkovich is the puppet of Putin, because as already those journalists said, he has not allowed, for example, Russians to play under their flag, and Russia is not allowed back in the Olympiad. I don't know how long it should last, by the way. I understand this decision and I oppose the war. It's horrible. It's a crime against humanity and a crime against common sense. But I'm not sure that Russian chess players should suffer for eternity, because this war can last very long. It can last as long as, for example, Israel's conflicts with Palestine, which have lasted like 50 plus years, 70 plus years, how very, very many, since 1950s. So if this lasts so long, if there is no ceasefire or no peace, should Russia be forever excluded from Chess Olympiad? I don't think so. I think especially considering the fact that none of the chess players at the top, except Karjakin, who has practically retired, none of the chess players at the top, like Nepomniachtchi, Dubov, Artemiev, they have not said anything like they support the war or anything. Most of them have said or hinted that they do not support the war. Dubov has been to protests against Putin in the past. Now there are no longer any protests because it's too dangerous. You just get thrown into jail immediately if you protest on the streets. But like 5 years ago, Dubov was one of the guys who was walking the streets of Moscow protesting Putin's policy. So that's the general sentiment amongst Russian players, in my experience, those whom I personally know.
But it's a completely hypothetical question. It's not going to change.
All right, thanks for watching. That's our 33rd episode.
Okay, so that was interesting. What do you think, guys? Write your comments on this, and maybe you have some further questions for me as a Russian and a Russian chess player. I'll be happy to answer them in the comments. See you in the next one.